Imagine this: your company has strong passwords, trained employees, and security tools monitoring the network. But what if the system itself becomes the way attackers get in? Servers, workstations, operating systems, and other systems are everywhere in the modern organization. And threat actors are constantly looking for weaknesses they can exploit. So, how do attackers target these systems? And more importantly, what can we do as SOC analysts to detect them and defend against them? Hi everyone, I am Mujtaba and welcome back to my cybersecurity learning journey. In this series, I am sharing my hands-on learning experience as I work through the SOC Level 1 path on TryHackMe. In the previous section, we explored the SOC role and looked at humans as attack vectors. Now we are shifting our focus to another major target: systems as an attack vector. In this room, we'll learn what systems are in the modern digital world, why threat groups target them, and explore real world attacks that exploit system vulnerability. And finally, we'll put what we learn into practice through two realistic SOC scenarios. So let's get started and see how system can become an entry point for attackers and how a SOC analyst can help stop them. So we'll mark this room as complete and move to our task 2, that is definition of a system. Imagine the castle again. This time, the castle has well trained gatekeepers. They know how to spot phishing attempts, recognize suspicious behavior, and even identify deepfakes. This sounds secure, right? But there is one problem. The main gate has cheap and fragile lock. So even though the gatekeeper is highly trained, the enemy doesn't need to trick them. They can simply find a weakness in the gate, break through the lock, and enter the castle with no one is watching. And that's exactly what can happen in cybersecurity. We often focus on protecting people from attacks such as phishing or social engineering. But attackers don't always need to target the user. Sometimes they can attack the system directly. A vulnerable system, an insecure application, a misconfigured cloud environment, or an unpatched machine. All these things can become an entry point into an organization. Without an employee clicking a malicious link or even knowing that an attack is happening. What do we mean by a system? Think about a service you use every day. Where are your emails stored? Where does a bank stores and process information? Where do applications or websites run? The answer is on a system. A system could be a physical server, a user's laptop or workstation, a virtual machine, a cloud platform such as Microsoft 365, or other infrastructure that stores, processes, or provides access to data and services. And not every system has the same value to the attacker. For example, compromising a school student's laptop might allow an attacker to steal their gaming account or add the computer to the botnet. But imagine compromising the laptop of senior IT administrator at the bank. That single system would potentially provide access to critical internal banking system. Or imagine the difference between compromising one employee's mailbox through phishing and compromising the entire mail server. With one mailbox, the attacker gain access to one person's email. But with the mail server, they could potentially gain access to thousands of mailbox. This is why systems are such attractive target. The value of compromised system depends on what the system has access to, what data it stores, and how important it is to the that particular organization. So here they have given some examples. Go through this. The system breached and the attack value. So a student's laptop could be used for account theft or added to botnets. IT administrator's laptop could provide access to critical internal infrastructure. A mail server could expose thousands of private emails. A server at the center of industrial network could allow attacker to disrupt or encrypt an entire network with ransomware. A government website management system could be compromised to alter or deface public facing content. So, as SOC analyst, we can't focus only on protecting user. We also need to understand which system exists, how valuable they are, and how attacker might target them. Because sometimes the attacker won't try to fool the gatekeeper; they'll simply look for a weak lock. Now, let's try to answer this question. Can cyber attacks happen without victim intervention? Yeah, cyber attack can happen without victim information if the system is not hardened. Okay. Can a breach of just a single system lead to disastrous consequences? Yeah, means if the system is connected to the network, then breach of a single system may allow the attacker to um, move on to another system through network. I believe it should be, yeah. Let's see. That's right. We have completed our task 2 and let's mark this as complete. Now we'll move to the task 3, that is attacks on systems. In most serious cyber attack, the first objective is simple: gain access to the target system. What happens after that depends on the attacker's goal. They might steal sensitive data, deploy ransomware, or spy on an organization, or even destroy information completely. But before any of that can happen, the attacker needs a way in. So let's look at three different common ways attacker gain access to the system. The first way would be human-led attack. Even though we are now talking about attacks against systems, human can still be the starting point. Imagine an employee walking into the office and finding a USB drive on the street. Out of curiosity, they plug it into their computer. That USB could contain malicious software or even automatically execute commands on the system. Another common example is downloading cracked or pirated softwares. The user think they are getting free software, but instead they may be downloading malware. And then there are also weak or reused passwords which most of the people will use. If you use the same weak password across multiple websites, a breach on one platform could potentially give an attacker access to another one. So sometimes the attacker doesn't need to exploit a complicated vulnerability. The user unknowingly open the door for them. Now, another way an attacker gain access to these systems is vulnerabilities. A vulnerability is simply a security weakness or a flaw in a software. It can be a flaw in operating system or any other system component. Think back to our castle analogy. Even if you have trained gatekeepers, strong security rules, what happens if there is already a hole in the castle wall? An attacker doesn't need to trick anyone. They can simply find that weakness and exploit it. Software vulnerabilities work in a similar way. Every piece of software can potentially contain security flaws. If attacker discover a vulnerability, they may be able to exploit it to gain unauthorized access or execute malicious action. And the risk becomes even greater when organization fails to install security updates and patches, if they fail to remove unnecessary internet exposure, if they fail to configure systems securely, if they fail to use strong password and access control. So a vulnerability alone may be dangerous, but poor configuration and weak security practices can make it even easier for attackers to exploit it. In 2024, over 40,000 software vulnerabilities were published and more than 300 were actively exploited. That's the data. Now, another way an attacker can gain access to your system is through supply chain attack. Think about your computer. You probably have a web server, messaging application, development tools, entertainment softwares. But here's the interesting part. Those applications don't work alone. They depend on another software components called libraries, packages, or dependencies. And those dependencies may depend on even more dependencies. Now imagine an attacker compromises one of those trusted components. Instead of attacking every company individually, the attacker could inject malicious code into a software update. When user download and install that trusted update, they unknowingly install the attacker's malware. This is called a supply chain attack. A famous example is the SolarWinds attack, where attackers compromised the software supply chain and affected numerous organizations. Another example is the 3CX compromise, where malicious code was introduced through a trusted software application and distributed it to the user. The dangerous part about supply chain attack is that the victim may be doing everything correctly. They might be downloading software from a legitimate vendor and installing what appears to be a normal update. But if the trusted supplier has been compromised, the attack can spread to many organizations at once. Even TryHackMe experienced a supply chain incident involving Lottie Player, a library which is used for animation. So the important lesson here is you can't always control every piece of software or every dependency running inside your environment. And that's why a SOC analyst, we need to prepare to detect suspicious activity and respond, even when the attack comes through something we normally trust. So far as we have seen three common path attacker can gain access, that is through human, through vulnerability, or through the software supply chain. And regardless of how the attacker gets in, once access is gained, the next challenge for SOC team is to detect what happened and respond before the attack caused serious damage. Now, let's answer this question. What is the term for a security flaw that can be exploited to breach a system? The term for a security flaw means vulnerabilities. Vulnerability, I believe so. What is the name of attack when malware comes from a trusted app or a library? Trusted app means we trust those applications, that is supply chain. There is something wrong. Supply chain. Let's mark this chapter as complete, this task, and start with our task 4, that is vulnerabilities. Now that we understand vulnerabilities as one of the ways attacker can gain access, let's take a closer look at how software vulnerabilities actually work. Every piece of software can contain flaws. Some vulnerabilities are discovered quickly, others can remain hidden for years. A great example is given over here, Shellshock, a major vulnerability is affecting Bash on Linux and other Unix based systems. The interesting part is that the flaw has existed since 1992, but it was not discovered until 2014. So for more than 2 decades, the vulnerability was sitting there, hidden inside the software. Think of it like discovering that your castle has had a secret crack in its wall for 20 years and nobody noticed it. Scary question is, what if the attacker discover that the crack before the defenders do? That's where we get something called zero-day vulnerability. What is a zero-day? A zero-day vulnerability is a security flaw that attackers may discover and exploit before a fix is publicly available. The term zero day basically refers to the fact that defenders have had 0 days to prepare or patch the vulnerability. This creates a difficult situation for security team. There may be no official patch yet. So while waiting for the software vendors to develop a fix, defenders need to focus on detecting suspicious activity and reduce the chances of exploitation. And this is where the work of SOC analyst become especially important. Your monitoring, investigation, and detection skills may help identify signs that someone is exploiting the vulnerability. From vulnerability to CVE, that is the next thing we will discuss over here. Once vulnerability becomes publicly known, it is usually assigned a CVE number. CVE, that stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. You can think of CVE as an official identification number for publicly disclosed vulnerabilities. For example, instead of just saying there is a vulnerability in this software, security professionals can refer to a specific CVE identifier. From that moment, a race often begins. Attackers race to develop exploits, and defenders race to identify affected system and apply security updates. Over the years, we have seen several major Windows vulnerabilities, including EternalBlue, PrintNightmare, and Fallen something. Okay, so here, this is EternalBlue, a critical SMB vulnerability that has been assigned a number CVE 2017 and 0144. So all the vulnerabilities will start with CVE. Then this is the year when that vulnerability was discovered. Okay, then the number of that particular vulnerabilities. Now, there is this 2023 24,880, that is another CVE vulnerability, a zero-day security bypass vulnerability. Falina vulnerability, this is the number assigned to it. And PrintNightmare, This is the number assigned to it. It was in 2021. So these are some of the vulnerabilities which were discovered. This shows us an important reality in cybersecurity. And organization needs a process to identify which systems are affected and respond quickly. Now, once the vulnerability is discovered, how do we respond to that? The main solution to to a known vulnerability is usually a patch. A patch is an update released by the software vendor to fix that security weakness. But what happens when we are dealing with 0 day and there is no patch yet? We can't just sit and wait. Instead, security teams can use temporary measures to reduce the risk. For example, they may try to restrict the access. If a vulnerable system doesn't need to be accessible by everyone, access can be limited to only trusted IP addresses and networks. Think of it as temporarily closing the castle gate and only allowing known people inside. There is another way which through which we can restrict access, that is or we can protect our organization, that is apply vendor mitigation. Sometimes the software vendor provides temporary instruction or configuration changes that can reduce the risk until a permanent patch becomes available. This is a type of mitigation, and they may not completely fix the vulnerability, but they can make exploitation little bit difficult. Now, the third we can see over here is blocking known attack patterns on IPF or WAF, IPS or WAF. Security tools such as intrusion prevention system, that is IPS, and WAF or web application firewall can sometimes detect and block known pattern associated with an attack. So even before the vulnerable software is patched, we may be able to stop attackers from using known exploitation techniques. Now, the key takeaway from this topic is a vulnerability usually always exists. Someone discovers it, it becomes publicly known and receives a CVE number. Attackers then they try to exploit that particular vulnerability, and defenders they apply mitigations and patches. But with a 0 day the situation is always challenging. The vulnerability may already be under attack before the patch exists, and during that critical period a SOC team needs to be on high alert, monitor for any suspicious behavior, investigate potential signs of exploitation, and help protect the organization until a permanent fix is available. Because sometimes its biggest challenge isn't just fixing the weaknesses, it's detecting the attackers before they have enough time to take the advantage. Now, let's answer these questions. What is the CVE for the critical SharePoint vulnerability dubbed ToolShell? So, ToolShell, have we seen over here anything? So here we can't find ToolShell option. Mm, SMB vulnerability, security bypass. So we are not able to find critical SharePoint vulnerability, nor we can find ToolShell. So we'll do one thing. We'll go to the website, that is cve.org, I believe. Okay, and here we'll just type the vulnerability name or the dubbed name, that is tool shell, and search over here. So this is Microsoft Corporation's vulnerability, and this is the number CVE 2025 53770. uh, we'll go back over here and we'll just paste that CVE number. To find out the CVE number, we just need to go to cve.org. How would you respond to detected vulnerability on your system? How would you respond to a detected vulnerability on your system? So what we will do is we will just apply patch to that particular vulnerability. So we have completed this task number 4. Let's mark this as complete, and we will move to task 5, that is misconfigurations. So far, we have talked about vulnerabilities, which are flaws or weaknesses in the software itself. But sometimes the software isn't the problem. The way we configure it is. This is called misconfiguration. A misconfiguration is not a bug in a software. Instead, it's a mistake in how a system, application, or a security setting has been configured. And these mistakes often happen because someone is trying to make things easier or more convenient. For example, imagine an administrator setting the password to 1111 because it's easier to remember than a long complex password. The system itself may be perfectly secure, but the configuration has now created an easy entry point for an attacker. Think of it like buying a strong, expensive safe, but setting the combination to 1234. The safe isn't broken, the way it's being used is the problem. And this happens more often than you might think. There have been real world incidents involving weak passwords, exposed cloud services, and even insecure internet connected devices. For example, a weak password 123456. This password exposed sensitive information related to millions of McDonald's job applications. In another case, a configuration cloud security setup contributed to the exposure of data belonging to more than 100 million customers. Misconfigured internet connected device, even things like smart appliances, can potentially be abused and added to the botnets. So, the important lesson is a secure product does not automatically mean a secure environment. How we configure that particular product matters just as much. Let's imagine an IT administration. They are setting up a critical company database. At first, everything seems normal, but then a few small mistakes are happening. First, the administrator sets a weak password. Maybe it's something simple because it's easier to remember. Then the database is accidentally exposed to the internet. They find and exposed services. They try common or weak passwords and eventually they gain access. The database wasn't necessarily compromised because of software vulnerability. It was compromised because of multiple insecure configurations over here. And this is an important cybersecurity lesson. Attackers don't always need advanced hacking techniques. Sometimes all they need is a system that has been left exposed with a weak security settings. So just let's say they have given one example also here. No vulner Here when they are installing the SQL databases, there is no vulnerability or misconfiguration yet. Now, in this database, they have entered the customer's data, and it is very sensitive data. Now, what happened? Somebody, maybe the administrator, they set the password 1111. That's a simple password, and usually it most of the mm, there is a list of common passwords which can be used by attackers. So 1111 or QWERT or password itself. So they will try all these weak passwords. Disable the firewall for the DB. The second misconfiguration was uh, giving unrestricted access for people to see the database. And with the combination of these two things, unrestricted access to the database as firewall is disabled, it makes an easy entry point for an attacker. And then they can try such type of passwords, and within few days they are able to access our database and steal the data. Now, unlike software vulnerability, a misconfiguration usually doesn't require waiting for the vendor to release a patch. The software may already have necessary security features. We simply need to configure it correctly. As a SOC analyst, you may sometimes discover a misconfiguration only after an attacker has already attempted to exploit it. For example, while investigating an alert, you might discover that a database should never have been exposed to the internet in the first place. But in smaller organizations, SOC and security teams may also take a more proactive role in identifying these problems before attackers find them. There are several ways to do these things, like pen testing or penetration testing. One approach. This involves authorized security professionals. Sometimes they are called as ethical hackers. They attempt to simulate attacks against the organization systems. Their goal is not to cause the damage, but to find the weaknesses before the actual real attackers find it. After the test, they provide a report explaining what they found and how the organization can fix that flaws. So it helps protecting the system. The next thing is vulnerability scanning. These tools automatically check system for known security issues such as outdated software, known vulnerabilities, default credentials, or weak or insecure configurations. The scan doesn't replace a human security analyst, but it can help identify a large number of potential problems, and that too with a very fast speed. The next is configuring the audits, configuration audits. This means reviewing how systems are configured and comparing those settings against security best practices. They need to analyze how our systems are configured and then match it up with best practices in the security field. One example is using CIS benchmark. This is one of the best security practices, which provides recommended security configuration guidelines for different operating systems, applications. Think of it as like a security checklist for your systems. Instead of asking, does this system work, we are looking for, is this system configured properly, securely? And that's the key difference. A system can work perfectly while still being dangerously insecure. So, whether we are dealing with a vulnerability or misconfiguration, the goal remains the same: find the weaknesses before an attacker does. Because sometimes the door isn't broken, we simply forgot to lock it. Uh, Now, let's answer the questions. Can a system patch or software update fix the misconfiguration? A system patch or a software update may not be able to fix the misconfiguration, because even if the system is secured or already doesn't have any flaw, misconfiguration is something which we are not configuring the systems properly, even if the system is updated or patched. So I believe it's nay. Which activities, which activity involves an unauthorized cyber attack to detect the misconfiguration? So, mm, there are different activities, configuration audits, and all those things. Let's see here: vulnerability scanning, or it should be, it is finding to detect the misconfiguration. So, okay, it should be pen testing, I think. Penetration testing. Okay, so there are several ways to respond to misconfiguration, but here an activity involves an authorized cyber attack. So we are authorizing that particular cyber attack to detect the misconfiguration. So the pentesters are the people who are authorized to carry out a cyber attack to find out that particular misconfiguration. That's why it's pen testing, not vulnerability scanning or configuring the audits. So we have completed our task 5. Let's mark it as complete, and we'll go for our task 6, that is practice. Remember our fortress analogy. Attackers are opportunists. They usually don't care whether they get into fortress by tricking the guard or finding a weak lock or discovering a hole in the wall. Their goal is simple: find the easiest way inside. And the same idea applies to cybersecurity. Attackers don't really separate attacks into categories like human hacking or system hacking. They will simply look for the weakest entry point. Maybe an employee clicks on a phishing email, or maybe server has unpatched vulnerability, or administrator accidentally exposes a database to an internet. From the attacker's perspective, it doesn't matter if it gives them access, it's the potential path into the organization. And that's why we need to put equal efforts into protecting both human and system. And we do that using mitigation and detection. Mitigation means taking action to reduce the chance or impact of an attack, whereas detection means identifying suspicious or malicious activity when it happens. So, here in this example, we can see there are two mitigation applied. The first one is the patched software. So, one attack was stopped directly due to patched software. Another attack was stopped because of usage of antivirus solution. But even after using all the mitigation techniques, attackers may sometimes find a way inside to our system, and that's where the SOC team handles the remaining attacks and all other systems. Now, unlike human, we can't train to spot the attack to the system or laptop to recognize the phishing email and all those things. But we can train people responsible for configuring and managing those systems. Now, let's have a look at some common ways organizations try to protect their system. Now, uh, the patch management. This is a process of identifying vulnerable system, and here they track available updates and apply the patches. Think of it like inspection of the fortress walls. So somebody found a big hole in the wall. They immediately try to reconstruct that wall or apply patches. If there is a crack in the wall, apply the patches and make it strong enough so that attackers uh, could not use that particular hole or crack to enter into the fort. So it has to be fast, means you cannot leave a hole into the system or a vulnerability into the system for a long time and wait for somebody to enter into the fort or our systems. Now another way is to train the IT teams, because misconfigurations often happens because of mistakes or lack of awareness, or simply sometimes uh, trying to make some things very convenient. IT teams may make some mistake. By training IT administrators or engineers about these security risks, organization would be able to reduce the chance of simple but dangerous mistakes. That mistakes could be anything like weak password, um, unnecessary internet exposure, or any other default settings, something like that. Network protection is the next mitigation technique. Now, let's say there are 100 system into an organization, and not every system needs to be accessed by everyone on the internet. If access is restricted to only trusted users or devices or IP addresses, attacker has fewer opportunities to reach that particular target. Uh, if we go back to our fortress analogy, think like there is a fort, and entrance to that fort is through, let's say, a bridge on a lake, or the it is deep into the forest. Entrance to that fort, the fort is built either on a mountain top. Okay, so make it very difficult for people to get into it. That is network protection. Oh, and another thing is uh, antivirus protection. Just like with attacks targeting human, antivirus or endpoint security tools can help detect and sometimes block malicious files, malwares, and suspicious behavior. It's another layer of defense. Now, security is not only using one single solution. We can combine different solutions or layers of protection so that our system should be safe. We may have to patch vulnerable softwares. Also, we may have to train the IT teams. We may have to restrict unnecessary access. we use antivirus or other security tools, and even after that, if there are some attacks happening, or if somebody has gained access to our system, we have SOC team available to uh, defend it. Okay, so this sorry, to detect that particular problem or to defend the system. Now here we need to go with the practice lab. We'll open our site, and for this lab, continue your SOC analyst journey at TryHackMe. This time, decide what to do with the system at risk and choose the best measure to protect your system at the remediation plan tab. Okay, so here we have TryHackMe security dashboard, and your pending task for today is to review and analyze potential system at risk and prepare and implement the corporate remediation plan. So first we'll go with systems at risk. Now here it says HQMail 2 at risk, action required. The penetration team reported that our Exchange mail server is affected by CVE 2024 49040 vulnerability. They managed to breach the server thanks to that CVE, and said anyone could do it since our server is internet exposed. Now our server is internet exposed, that is one thing, and penetration testing team uh, were able to breach the server by using this vulnerability, CVE vulnerability. So what action should be taken? Here there are three options given. Ask IT to immediately change password of all mail users. Hmm. Okay. Ask IT to apply a patch and update Exchange. Okay. And restrict access to HQ mail server to only Office IP. Now here penetration testing, since our server is internet exposed, so as the server is in internet exposed, and maybe that is the need of an organization to keep that server exposed to the internet. So if we restrict access to servers to only Office IP, that may not work. Ask IT to immediately change password of all mail users. It's difficult to change password for all the mail users. I believe that ask IT to apply a patch and update, of course. So as this is this vulnerability is present in the database and it has been assigned the number, so definitely there would be some sort of patches or updates available. If it is a 0-day vulnerability, then that is a problem where you may not have any patch or this thing updates available for that particular vulnerability. But if it is mentioned into the CVE database, that means there should be some sort of patch or update available. So we'll ask IT to apply a patch and update the Exchange. Okay, next. The threat actors managed to brute force an admin panel. Okay, threat actors managed to brute force an admin panel of our WordPress website. Okay, and replace the main page with malware links and gambling ads. Okay, so restore the website from backups and close the alert. Update all website components to the latest version, or change the admin password to more secure one. Mm, the first action should be changing the admin password to more secure one. Then we may need to restore the website from backups and Close the alerts. The password was brute forced for website and replace the main page with malware links. Okay. Even if we restore the website from backup and close the alert, now as they have been able to brute force the admin panel, they may again log in and do the same thing. So I believe changing the admin's password to a more secure one should be our first priority. Let's see what it says. Mm, yeah, uh, we'll go to the next. Our neighbor company was hit with ransomware attack a week ago. Okay, that's not our company. A neighbor company was hit by ransomware attack a week ago. They say it started from an exploitation of their old Cisco firewall and advised us not to repeat their mistake and audit our Cisco devices. What action should be taken? Ensure all corporate firewalls are patched and do not have CVEs. Replace all Cisco device with alternative like FortiGate. Disable all firewalls until the thorough audit is finished. Disabling firewalls may not work, and we may be the next immediate target for this. Replace all Cisco devices. Replacing all the devices with alternatives may not be feasible and cost effective. Ensure all corporate firewalls are patched. Okay, so this thing we can do because yeah, and we have applied the latest patch. Right. Next alert. You observe an unusual spike of a security event coming from the designate designer's laptop. You observe an unusual spike of security event coming from designer's laptop. A trusted 3D design application suddenly starts running malicious commands after the recent update. You need to quickly plan your next step. You observe an unusual spike of security events coming from designer's laptop. Okay, his laptop is giving alerts. 3D design application suddenly starts running. Okay, there is an application for 3D designing, and when you run this application, malicious CMD command is also running after the recent update. Before it was not happening. Okay. Blame the designer for misconfiguring the 3D design app. No, we should not do that. Look for a critical vulnerability in 3D design app. Investigate a supply chain attack coming with the update. Investigate a supply chain attack. Okay, this is see, this is a third party application. Okay, we are not making this. Our designer is using this 3D design application, and we are not the one who can look for critical vulnerability in this app. So this option has to be done by the vendor, not us. So this is the problem of supply chain attack coming after the update. So we have to investigate that particular thing and uh, contact our vendors. So let's see. Yeah. And we have completed our first part. Let's copy this and paste it over here. Okay. Now let's go to our dashboard again. Prepare and implement the corporate remediation plan. Now here, to protect the system from future attacks, you need to apply the hardening steps. Which of the remediation below would benefit our organization the most? Protect the system from future attack. So we want our systems to be protected from future attacks. For that, we need to harden the system. So it's like mitigation steps we need to do. Security password policy. Here, enforcing strong auto-generated passwords for all admin and service account. This is the best form of hardening actually. So I will choose this. Okay. Patch management policy. Define a clear process for identifying, testing, and applying a software patches. Okay, this should also go in our system. How many are there? There are so many. Let's take this. Security training for IT. Regularly train IT staff on common misconfiguration and how to avoid them. Of course, this is also necessary. Block public access to your company's website to protect it from threat. This cannot be done because if our website is not visible to public, uh, that may be not good. Obscure server naming. Use random server names like to confuse potential attacker. Hmm. Shared account. Ask IT to use single shared account to simplify security monitoring. No. Antivirus protection. Install reliable antivirus software on all. Okay, we will choose this. Why we are not choosing these three? First, our website should be live. We cannot restrict it. Second, obscuring server names. Use random server names, like means even if you use any name, attackers, if they are able to enter into the system, they may somehow find the server, whatever the name you are keeping for that server. And ask IT to use single shared account to simplify security monitoring. Um, no, IT. There may be many people in IT department, and it's not a good idea to use a single shared account. So these are the correct options. We will submit our remediation plan. I hope it's correct. Yeah, and then we'll just copy this and paste it over here, and we have completed our task 6, I believe. Yes, and we'll go to conclusion part. Even though SOC analysts don't typically manage systems directly, understanding the common attacks and defenses and sharing them with the IT department is key to broadening your cybersecurity perspective. If you want to grow quickly and be strong team player, stay updated on latest threats and always share the news with others. So these are some of the type of reports and all those things. Exploited vulnerability catalog. Okay, maybe go through all those things and try to understand. We'll complete this room. We'll mark this as check, and we have completed our video over here, our walkthrough of, and we will meet in our next video.